Hello and welcome to Talking Bottom. I'm Paul Tanter.
I'm Matt Brooks.
And I'm Ange Pearson.
And we're continuing in our series about Rik Mayall's iconic characters, all the characters that he's played, who, for many actors, if they had one character that people remembered them for, they would be very happy. Rik Mayall has a handful of them. And this week, we're talking about Alan B'Stard, MP in the New Statesman.
The largest majority in the House.
Yeah.
It's his most serious work, I'd say.
It is.
Very different.
Well,
Very different.
It's exceedingly funny, but it's satirical in its tone.
For those of you who aren't aware of what The New Statesman is, it's a political comedy. It was made and set in the 80s under the Thatcher regime, with Rik Mayall playing the lead character of Alan B'Stard, MP for Halton Price, as Ange said, biggest majority in the House of Commons. With 80s Britain in the grip of a Tory government enjoying a powerful majority, a different kind of MP arrives in Westminster. Conservative MP for Halton Price, Alan B'Stard, is the new kid on the block and quick to set about making his name and increasing his fortune, letting nothing stand in his way as he manoeuvres himself up the slippery pole of power. Charming, good-looking, and without a shred of conscience or compassion, the money-based aspirational values of the decade are embodied in one man and look set to sweep aside the established guard of old-boy politicians. B'Stard is a shameless, selfish, dishonest lech who will happily resort to murder. He's a distillation of the greed and callousness that were considered the hallmarks of new money Thatcherites, epitomises Tory sleaze, and is the living embodiment of Gordon Gekko's greed is good sentiment that ran through the 80s. The New Statesman ran from 1987 to 1994 across 4 series, totaling 26 episodes plus 3 specials. Now, it started after Rik Mayall had established himself as an actor, as a writer, and as a creator capable of creating and delivering iconic, memorable characters. The Guardian Arts in the 80s said Mayall has made a swift name for himself as the creator of 2 of the least appealing young men ever to disgrace the British television screen. As the giggling, snotty Brummie, Kevin Turvey, he was an instant success in A Kick Up the 80s. As Nasty Rick in The Young Ones, he made JR look like Father Christmas. Now, after The Young Ones, and after Filthy Rich and Catflap, Rik Mayall was looking for another character to play. And apparently, producer Paul Jackson, our good friend Paul Jackson, suggested to Rik that he should track down comedy writers Lawrence Marks and Maurice Gran, who were kind of hot at this point. They had a history of gag writers for people like Frankie Howard, but they had a big hit with a sitcom called Shine On Harvey Moon, which Nigel Planer had starred in. So Rik Mayall tracked them down, I believe, at a comedy convention where they were doing a talk about comedy. They weren't too keen to work with him to begin with because they'd had not a great experience working with Nigel Planer.
Yeah, I love this anecdote. It's really, really interesting that Rik obviously sought them out, isn't it? And they, I think, politely sort of listened to him, sort of pitch, when are you going to, write a character for me? And I want to do something a little bit more grown up. And what was it? There's an exact quote that he gave to them, which I love, which is that he told them that he wanted to play a character who was vain, greedy, depraved, obsessed with money, and not afraid to kill, very much like himself.
To which their reply was, "Oh, you want to be a Tory MP?"
Yeah, they thought, oh, well, that's a Tory backbencher. So that, Rik was instrumental in creating obviously he gave them the idea that he wanted to play someone really nasty.
Yeah.
And obviously the Tory backbencher idea was a no-brainer, I guess, for them.
And you'd think this would be gold at the time, but apparently they dodged him so successfully that it was only the fact that they appeared on Wogan. So there's an appearance of Wogan, several appearances of Wogan that we see on YouTube when Rik is on there doing interviews. And on one of them, he was on the same slot, on the same show as the writers.
Yeah.
And apparently he went up to them and said, "Well, you bastards, why didn't you ring me?"
Yeah.
And at this point, this was then the start of when they actually started to talk about a character. And as you said, Andrew, Rik wanted something that embodied like all of his worst elements.
Yeah. And I think the idea that it came out of just, Rik saying that he wanted a vehicle in which he could be a bit more grown up, because he was known for playing, I think he described it as spotty teenagers, essentially, and Kevin and Rik from The Young Ones. So
how much time before Bottom was this?
Oh, this was
87 when they did the first series. So
and 89 when the pilot was made,
correct.
Right?
Yeah. So they would have been in talks about it, sort of tail end of, Catflap.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, Rik described in an interview with The Guardian in 1987 that got reposted in 2014 on the website, hence being able to find it. Rik said Kevin was just boring. I mean, I don't think he was being too derogatory. He was talking about the character. Rik was just self-centered and Rich was just greedy. This man, Alan, has all the vices. So, of course, we made him a Tory MP. it's a proper jump from any of his
It
previous
is
characters, isn't it?
such a departure, isn't it? And it just shows the range that Rik had, like the amount of different characters he obviously played over the years. You know, we could talk about all kinds of different characters from Rik Mayall Presents that he went on to do, and he did, I mean, All About George and all that later on, didn't he? He was in The Bill. Was he in, what was that one with Alan Davis?
Jonathan Freak.
Yeah, wasn't he in like
Yes,
a
a
couple
couple.
of, and he played a really sort of like, I can't even remember, but it was a really serious character. You know, I was talking about the New Statesman. I think it was a character that, certainly when I first watched it, I didn't really know. Obviously, I was still very much a child. I didn't really know everything to do with the Tories and everything. You know, you're just going to feel, I mean, I grew up near Liverpool, so the Maggie Thatcher government was obviously something that I knew was very much not popular. But Alan like bursts onto the screen, doesn't he, in that pilot? You know, it's him sort of having won the largest majority. You get very, very quickly that he's probably bribed his way there. His horrible wife, Sarah, who's just a perfect match for him in terms of like being just
the
as
reason
awful. Yes, he's
in it.
married her because of his power and influence. And you just like within a few moments, you've absolutely Alan B'Stard is brought to life, isn't he? And he's real. He's there in front of you, as with all of Rik's characters, and so different to what's gone before.
So that's the first episode, which was called Happiness is a Warm Gun. It went out on the 13th of September 1987. And as you say, it just made it clear that Rik Mayall had another string to his bow. In terms of the story for that episode, I'll give a brief synopsis. The episode sees Alan B'Stard elected as the new MP for Halton Price after cutting the brake lines on the cars of his political opponents. And there's a snag when he's blackmailed into forcing through a bill to arm the police. But he ruthlessly turns the situation to his advantage, ensuring he wins the lucrative contract to supply the guns, faulty ones, which explode when fired. He habitually cheats on his wife, who does the same to him in return, and insults, swindles, and demeans all around him.
Yeah, it's a completely loveless marriage, isn't it? But they're both such a great like match for each other. They're both horrible.
Yeah,
they deserve each other.
But I wouldn't say it's completely loveless. I think they do challenge each other, and they maybe recognise each other's qualities and stuff.
They're a match for each other in terms of intelligence and conniving and just being generally vile. I would say Alan, he doesn't always win, but by the end of it, he absolutely does, doesn't he? She's the wins.
As it goes on, she is on his side more often. In the beginning series, she's definitely a heel to him, but she's his accomplice in a couple of schemes in series 3.
I suppose it's almost that thing of, although they're married and although he has things like the idiotic best friend / sidekick in Piers, it's that thing of people who are trapped together who hate each other but also at the same time kind of love each other or respect each other because they're kind of two sides of the same coin.
Again, I think they serve each other's interests, don't they? There's no one else who'd do better at serving their interests than each other.
The fact that she is cheating as much as him makes her not the victim at all.
Yeah,
and therefore,
she's got power. Yeah.
It doesn't feel sexist really with his ways. He's just a bastard.
She gives as good as she gets, doesn't she? You know, there's all kinds of horrendous murderous plots that come from her. I mean, it is a show that I wouldn't argue is in any way a sort of feminist manifesto. I mean, the way Alan treats women, women, is vile, isn't it? He just discards them, uses them, abuses them, but he does that with everyone. It's not just women.
Although you say that, but his wife gets the best of him more than once and has her own things going on that he doesn't know about. So
there's power.
In some ways, you could say it's a very feminist show.
Well, yeah, I don't know, because you don't like any of them, do you? Again,
I like Piers. I think Piers is
I always disliked Piers.
He's got an annoying voice. Yeah. But I find him...
He's played really well,
obviously. That's Piers Fletcher Jervis, who is the baldrick to Alan B'Stard's Blackadder, his foil, who is not only someone who's stupider than him, but stupider than everyone else around them in the room. He's a fellow MP and kind of Alan's de facto assistant, and his stupidity often adversely affects Alan and his plans. Alan, though, is usually, though not always, the smartest man in the room, which I think, for sitcom, is a bit of a departure in terms of British protagonists, because usually the lead in a British sitcom, and we've talked about having this thing of they've got aspirations to more, which Alan certainly does, but often he is actually the smartest person in the room. And I do like, and you mentioned this earlier, Ange, often at the end, he ends up winning. If you look at most other sitcoms, be it Fawlty or Partridge or Del Boy or David Brent, at the end of the episode, usually they've come off and they've lost. Alan, 9 times out of 10, actually wins.
With the exception of Flashheart, who's a supporting character. This is the only Rik character who comes on top most of the time.
Yeah, but he does it through ill-gotten gains, and he does it with no moral backbone, and that is the point of him being a Tory, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that is why, the Tories and people in power and absolute utter bastards will win over the little people, because they will grease the pole and they will bribe and murder their way. I mean, there are just throwaway scenes. I watched it was an episode in series 4, I think, where Alan's driving the car, and it is just a throwaway scene. Basically, there's a window washer that stops and says, windows, whatever. Alan doesn't even notice him. Takes off. He's like, "What's this? It's a terrorist!" And he launches over him, takes him halfway down the road. He falls off in front of them, and then he reverses and runs over him, and he's just cackling away, laughing, saying, "I think I've just invented a new blood sport." And that's it. It doesn't serve any other part of the plot. It's just to show you what an absolute cunt Alan is, and it's gloriously funny. Like, there is such dark humour in B'Stard. I think Marks and Gran, they were obviously, as you say, already very, very experienced writers. And the narrative and the setup of the world in Alan B'Stard's universe is perfectly thought out, isn't it?
Like, it is a different universe. The differences that spring to mind for me is the police have guns now in the UK, and hanging has been brought back.
Yeah, usually because Alan's been at the the heart of making those things happen.
Are there any other major things that have changed because of Alan B'Stard's influence on the world?
I mean, there are loads. I have to admit, I can't remember the entire back catalogue of every episode storyline, but there's always something that Alan's trying to get across the line in law, or that he's going to try and change in order to serve his own purposes, right?
Yeah. That thing you mentioned about him taking someone over the top of the car, I don't know specifically how that was written originally, but I wouldn't be surprised if the show had a knack for, Rik Mayall's talked about this in interviews, of it was a show that would change constantly up until the last minute. Obviously, because there was topical stuff, because it was, to do with politics. Often on the night of recording, the writers would be running up to him and handing him hastily written jokes, and he'd be saying like, "Here's 5 good ones." And he said in one interview, it was raining gags. But Rik was also very instrumental in changing a lot of stuff and making things evolve. For example, in one script, there was one line of action that just said, "B'Stard hits Piers," and that was it. But by the time they got to final rehearsals, Rik Mayall had transformed this into a 5-minute torture sequence involving an electric drill.
Props ahoy, and lots of violence. It is really violent on the rewatch. Like, I remember it being violent, especially, he bullies Piers.
Savage, isn't it? It's still funny, but it's almost just cruel.
Some of it verges on horror film, and I say that in terms of the violence. And also, I gave the Who Shot Alan B'Stard episode a rewatch today, and I'd forgotten that at the beginning, Piers has a dream and he's feeling guilty about Alan being dead, and they have 2 bits. One where Alan pops up out of the grave, decaying, and then the next one where he's in bed next to him, even more decay. It was like American Werewolf in London, where the characters
his face off, doesn't he?
Yeah,
literally rips the skin from his face. It is horrific.
What's the one where he comes back from Russia or something, and then Piers now has a baby, and Alan hangs the baby out the window?
He's like, well, let's baptise him, maybe in the Thames. It's so funny.
Was that an idle threat, or would he have done it? Would he have dropped that baby?
I think with Alan, Piers believes that it isn't an idle threat. And it's all about what he's making Piers believe, isn't it? And he's seen him do horrendous things to other people, so why wouldn't he just drop Piers's baby out of the Houses of Parliament into the Thames? Interestingly, by the way, Piers, the actor, he's the son of Patrick Troughton, who was the second Doctor Who, which I thought was an interesting point. Once you can see it.
Yeah.
Anyway, just thought I'd throw that.
Killed by a church spire in The Omen.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, because I just want to say, it's not that I dislike Piers and the performance or anything. Like, it is perfectly played, but it's just that you don't warm to Piers, do you?
He knows less about politics than me.
You kind of enjoy Alan bullying him.
Piers has to be as wet as he is, because any other reasonable or normal person wouldn't hang around with Alan and be bullied like that.
Well, he's also
there are people who are kind of foils, but will give back to him and challenge Alan, and then they're therefore not in as many episodes, because they've noticed in the first series with Norman/Norma, they are kind of the fixer of Alan's schemes and stuff, and they're dropped from series 2 onwards, and Alan's in charge of all of his own schemes. And I find that really odd in the rewatch, that character dynamics. Like, you can sort of feel that this isn't necessary. Alan is very capable of doing his own plans. He didn't need someone setting up schemes for him.
Right.
You know, it kind of lessens him a bit.
It's probably that they thought, right, we've got these scenes where he's conversing with someone who's of far less intelligence than him, Piers, someone who's on the same level, but he can't be truthful with, his wife. We need someone that he can be a little bit similar on the level, but there's still a slight power.
And I think it was to demonstrate that, there is underhand tactics, there are people pulling strings. Do not, think that there are not like bribes and ill-gotten gains and all these things going on in government, right? And that, I think I remember reading a quote in an article, because Tories, like a lot of Tory MPs actually really liked the New Statesman. You'd expect there to be a backlash, right? Which I'm sure there was in certain circles. But apparently they really liked it. And I think one MP once said to either Rik or Mark Gran, you wouldn't believe how spot on you have got some of these things. It is uncanny that you've got some of these things right. So I think it's to serve the idea that he's not in his own little world making all these things happen. There are other people involved benefiting from all of these schemes, and it's part of driving forward the narrative, isn't it? To have somebody else coming in to help out Alan with it rather than it being all on his shoulders.
What you just said there with the Tory MPs, it reminds me of as an interview that Rik Mayall does to promote the stage show, which is the last time he plays Alan.
Yes.
He speaks about that they did some press and then just went over to Westminster, and there was some politicians doing something, and then they kind of gave it like a double look. Look, it's Rik Mayall. That's Rik Mayall. And then the interviewer was saying, did they say is that Rik Mayall, or did they say is that Alan B'Stard?
Yeah.
And he thought, no, probably was Alan.
But he is so believable, and the speeches he gives in the show, like I watched one from the very final episode in series 4, and it could almost be word for word what you'd expect someone like Nigel Farage to be parroting at the moment. It's hateful stuff about anti-European sentiment, etc.
Yeah.
And obviously how brilliant Britain is and all that kind of stuff. It's like time and time again these themes have been gone over in politics, and it's quite scary.
Well, we still see it now, don't we? There's that famous one that often gets used as a meme of, in the old days, if you were poor, you got sick.
And you died.
It's a brilliant rule of 3.
You mentioned that there was sort of talk about how realistic it was. The show actually did get assistance from people inside the House of Commons. So Labour peeress Renee Short and a then up-and-coming Tory politician called Michael Portillo were both asked for sort of tips on things that happen in Parliament. And Portillo actually gave them a tour around the House of Commons as well. So there were some rumours at the time that B'Stard was based on Portillo, though he denied it. Though apparently Edwina Currie said in interviews that once the show got big, lots of Tory MPs were sort of claiming, yes, it's based on me, actually.
That's right, yeah, they like the flattery of it, which is obscene, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do you think this would work now without the Tory side of things? I mean, he did the New Labour takedown as well.
I think I was going to say Alan B'Stard is one of the characters Rik played that I think you could pick him up and drop him pretty much anywhere and he would be very, very funny.
Despite it being very 80s, it's also incredibly timeless.
Oh, absolutely. You can update it. I mean, not to always harp on about Coogan, but that's the brilliant thing about Alan Partridge, isn't it? He's the kind of character that can grow with the time because he never changes.
He would succeed so well in this post-truth politics that we're in now.
That's what I mean. I was watching it, and it says "clinging to power" is the Tory Party conference slogan behind him, which is just hilarious. Clinging to power. He's rallying up his own schism in the Tory Party to be like the anti-European side, which is what it's become. So I think Alan would work today.
Yeah. So we talked about a little bit about the first episode, and I think we won't do every episode, but the second episode, Passport to Freedom, contains a lot of great examples of where the character differs from Rik's previous characters and where there are sort of similar traits. So within a few short minutes, that episode rounds off a series of wonderfully disgusting character traits. There's a scene at the very top which establishes Alan's sex appeal, both his lust and his desire from women. And we'll come back to that in a second, but I'll just go through the episode very briefly.
From women?
Yeah, a lot of women find him very, very attractive. So through this episode, Alan forgets his passport and can't get on a flight. So he throws a series of World War II-based xenophobic insults at a German airline worker, then narrows his British superiority to class-based smugness towards Labour MP Bob Crippen, a rival of his. And then,
I really like Crippen.
Yeah, it's sort of John Prescott-y, isn't it?
There's a fantastic line with that, like, do you like hospital food, pal? So I love it, but of course I'm with Booper.
Yeah, but which of course is, when you look at a lot of other Rik's other characters,
Jimmy Carr ripped that off.
Oh, did he? Okay.
Yeah.
Yet another reason he's a cunt.
He did it. He did it in his set like years later. Yeah. Anyway.
any of Rick's other characters up to this point would have been scared, whereas Alan B'Stard's response is to just give a sneering smile.
His friends are holding him back, and he's going for him, and Alan's not getting out of the way, is he?
Yeah. Then, so after having virtually insulted everyone in the vicinity, he's then brought down by his own idiotic assistant, who yanks open his suitcase, revealing that he, despite the fact that he's loaded, has stolen a load of cheap stuff from the hotel.
Where he's had his one-night stand. He got her pregnant as well, didn't he?
Well, she said, "I'm not on the pill," didn't she?
No, but then there's a phone call where he says, "Oh yeah, just drink a bottle of gin and have a hot bath." Yeah. No, of course I don't love you.
And then later on, he's still assured in his own superiority when he meets someone in the House of Commons, a security guard's hand, who is forced to shake it out of politeness. And it's easy to miss this. As he walks off, he wipes his hand very
doesn't he say, "Would it be an enormous liberty if I shook your hand?" He's like, "Yes, it would, but I'll do it anyway," pretending that's a joke, but that's exactly how he felt.
Yeah.
We've missed my favourite line of the episode where...
you're going to talk about. So after that, he goes home to explain to his wife why he missed the plane. Basically, in order to be cleared to go on this trip, everyone had to have a blood test, and it turns out Piers has AIDS.
Yeah. Piers' AIDS test was positive. And while he's saying that, he's like, "Yes, that'll do," and he drives into his parking space in his mansion and nearly runs over the gardener. Yeah, the gardener's just gets out of the way in time, and I think he speeds up a little bit.
Several character traits I'd like to sort of look at briefly. One is those sort of nasty qualities, the xenophobia, the willingness to throw your friends under the bus.
Yeah.
I feel like he shares those with a lot of the other characters that he's played at this point.
You just made me think there's a bit of Rimmer in him.
Oh, I hadn't thought about that. Okay.
Oh, a little bit of Rimmer in him.
Okay.
I know what you mean. There's a similar attitude, isn't there, between Alan and Rimmer? But I think Alan actually carries off the confidence. But if do you mean to say the superiority?
I mean the throwing your friends under the bus thing.
Yeah. He'll do anything in order to win, right? It's
yes,
that kind of thing.
But he does win.
Yes, that's what's different, because Rimmer never does. So that's a difference in terms of how it affects that character, that trait. And the xenophobia. I mean, Richie. Yes,
I don't need a passport. We won the war.
But so there's xenophobia in Rick's other characters. Where are you getting that from? In Kevin Turvey or Rick the Poet?
Well, I'm not saying they all have it. So that's what we're chatting about. So
right.
So Kevin Turvey, no.
Yeah.
Rick the student, he wouldn't because he's too left wing. Rick from Richie from Bottom, definitely.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. At this point, it's interesting because obviously B'Stard was born before Richie, wasn't he? But there's Richie Rich in Cat Flap. And I think I'd tend to agree that there probably is if you dug down into his neuroses and what he really thinks about the world. I don't know whether they ever got that political in Cat Flap and talked about that sort of thing. But I think, for me, I think the nastiness of the xenophobia is probably B'Stard and Richie.
Yeah, okay.
Do you think that if Richie had money and went into politics, there'd be some kind of similarity there? I suppose Alan's been educated well, hasn't he? I imagine.
Yes.
So maybe not. But there's certainly, the xenophobia thing is the biggest familiarity between the two of them.
Well, it's interesting you say that because I think there are definite similarities between Alan and Richie. The things that make them different is Alan has confidence and that makes him attractive to women. If you took away the confidence, and he's got money as well.
Yeah, I was about to say, and money.
And his hair's different as well, isn't it? Does he have a perm or something?
Right.
Yes,
his hair's a little bit curly.
He's got that very classic kind of tight, kind of curled perm.
Yeah. Right, so the pair of them, Richie and Alan B'Stard, they share a lot of personality traits, but Alan's a bit smarter and he's got bags of unbridled confidence in himself. To anyone outside of his circle, outside of his moneyed right-wing power-hungry circle, they would see him as an arrogant, slimy chancer, but those within it are all charmed by him, and those are the people that he wants to charm. Now, I think Alan could be Richie with confidence, some cash, and a sharp suit. So if you took Alan's seduction scene from this episode at the beginning in the Heathrow Hotel, if you took that and you flipped the character to Richie from Bottom, I think you could still play the dialogue exactly the same, but the performance, tone, inflection, mannerisms would all be completely different, all while still being believable.
Yeah, now, it's interesting that...
Do you want to read it here with me?
It wouldn't necessarily... be that he'd have got her into bed in the first place, but I agree with you.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's the same staying power that Richie probably would. I think. 2 seconds. Right, so who am I?
All right.
Or shall I be the woman?
Go on. Okay, all right, Alan, excitedly. All right, now bear in mind this could be Richie, so I won't do it as Alan or Richie. But when you're listening, just think of this in Richie's voice. All right, we'll do it with the light on.
I can't go through with this.
Well, do you mind if I start without you?
I mean, I don't do one-night stands.
Well, I wish you told me this before. This is the Heathrow Grange Hotel. These rooms don't come cheap. I don't want to sleep here.
That's a horrible thing to say.
Is it? Well, I'm only joking. I'm renowned in Westminster for my sense of humour and for my enormous majority and for my incredible virility. Vicky, this isn't a one-nighter. This is a first-nighter. I love you. I've loved you since the first ever since the Sloaney Girl Temp Bureau sent you into my life yesterday.
Yeah, it is very, very much the same sort of chat up like technique that you would expect Richie to have if, as you say, he had power and money and he was in any way in touch with the Sloaney Girls Temp Bureau and sending him girls to his workplace, because that's the thing, Richie doesn't work.
Yeah. But him referencing the cost of the hotel is a hair's breadth away from this Coca-Cola cost me 80p.
Yes,
that's a rich person's version of that.
Alan plays it with charisma and charm.
Yeah,
and as you say, like the lines are very much like it could be in Richie's voice, but Richie would be getting more and more outraged, and I'm not sure Richie would necessarily talk her round.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Even with because I love you.
Alan's got the charm, whereas Richie would have the desperation.
Richie would be too desperate, yeah.
Isn't it amazing that we talked about how good-looking Rik Mayall is before, but isn't it amazing how a single actor can play, and I know it's the job of an actor before people go, well, that's an actor's job, but can look so handsome and so dapper and debonair and appear so charming, and yet also, as we've said, could do the same lines. I really wish Rik was still alive, because it'd be great to try again to do the lines as two different characters, but could do the same lines as a different character, and they would totally they would work. Yeah. One character is ugly to women, and one character is believably attractive to women,
and it all boils down to confidence.
Yeah. And for this, in the Rik Mayall Festival, we went to see the Nintendo adverts Q&A with John Lloyd and the director of the adverts. He told a story of Rik said, right, I'm going to do this one handsome.
Yeah.
And you see, like, that's my favourite one, the Link advert where he walks into the door frame at the end, the window, I should say.
Yeah.
Yeah. Rik does, like, he's a chameleon, isn't he? And I mean, again, we've talked about costume before, and I do think once you put on a smart suit and you've got your hair in this lovely tight wave, and with Flashheart, he said as soon as he put on the outfit, he felt like a human penis, and it's all part of Rik building his characters, right? So I think if you style someone in a certain way, and then of course you've got Rik coming in with his enormous acting prowess, it's unbelievable that he could play someone so utterly uncharming as Richie or Rik, isn't it, really? Because Rik was so effortlessly charismatic in his everyday life. Like, you can tell.
I know it's not within the world that the character lives. He's not charming, but there's still there's a lovableness. The charm's there a little bit, but I know exactly what you mean.
What's interesting with B'Stard, and I was thinking about it on rewatching, is that with British comedy, most of the time at the nub of these kind of love-to-hate characters is that you do pity them in some way.
Yeah.
You're on their side because you sort of feel like, oh, they're just kind of misplaced in their intent, or they're so pathetic. We know they're not going to win by the end, so we'll root for them. The likes of Alan Partridge or Basil Fawlty or any of those kind of, broken men, right? Whereas B'Stard, I would argue, I don't feel pity for at any point. Even when he's condemned to death, he's going to win.
Do you love to hate him, or do you just hate him?
I love to hate him.
Yeah.
Like, you enjoy watching him. Like, Rik's portrayal of Alan B'Stard is a delight to watch.
But you know what's funny about that? All those characters who people end up rooting for, like Partridge and Fawlty and Del Boy, those characters would in some ways want people to root for them. Yeah. We don't necessarily root for Alan. I mean, we do kind of because it's played by Rik Mayall. But Alan wouldn't give a shit if we rooted for him or not.
No.
Because he's a proper psychopath.
Absolutely.
It's a really good quote of his that sums it up very well. I didn't get to where I am today by caring what people think or by paying tax.
And it's just so wonderfully observed and acted, isn't it? Yeah. Like, that character of Alan, the fact that it just was born out of the fact that Rik said he wanted to play a more grown-up character and someone who was depraved and hateful and all these, and it's like, yes, it was a gift. And you've got to remember the political feeling at the time. This was the tail end of Thatcherism.
Yeah.
And Rik had already been, Rik the poet, and they'd made their political sort of statements along that line, but not overtly, not out there for everyone to see. So for him taking on the Tory backbencher that is Alan B'Stard is a direct attack on the Tory government.
Definitely,
isn't it? And it's absolutely glorious. And I do wish Alan was still here as a character, and there was more of this kind of. I mean, obviously, there's been other political satires, but I don't think there's anything that's quite as cutting and as biting as Alan B'Stard was, certainly at the end of Thatcherism and in the early days of John Major. Like, that's what it spans, isn't it? Did Major get in 1990?
1990, yeah.
So it spans that entire, kind of the downfall of the Tories, because then we went into Blair and New Labour, and it was wonderful to see him obviously reborn as a Blairite.
Well, Rik would claim credit for the downfall of Thatcher because of the New Statesman. And now I think it's time for a word from our sponsor.
It was all a bit worrying, really, but the doctor put us onto this top specialist. He was terrific, and he got us into a private room. And because we've got Bupa, they paid the bills. As it happened, Bupa actually built the hospital too, and we could visit almost any time we wanted.
Hello, Mummy, how are you?
You look better, love.
You look better.
You can find out more by writing to Bupa. Free Post, Birmingham. Bupa. It makes all the difference.
Another character trait that we've skirted on that I'd like to talk about a bit more is that he has in spades versus all his previous characters is intelligence. Talking again about Passport to Freedom, this is a great example because it has the character embarking on a scheme, but the scheme working and them using their intelligence to make it work.
And this is Series 1, Episode 2, isn't it?
Series 1, Episode 2. Alan finds out his wife is going to divorce him, and she is actually the one who has all the money in the relationship. But she's mainly rich because she's inherited 200,000 shares in the brilliantly named Ocelot Motors, which is referenced in a Grand Theft Auto game, by the way. And now she's rich, she plans to divorce him. So he hatches a scheme where he wants to stay rich. Now, I think in a lot of other sitcoms, they would go, right, what have we got to have the main character do? Okay, they need to win back the wife. Okay, that'll be one thing. Okay, they need to steal the shares. Okay, no, that's another thing. Alan's plan is to manipulate his opposition MP, Bob Crippen, into calling a strike at the plant, Ocelot Motors, which then ends up bankrupting and ending the company, rendering the shares worthless. That's like genius Machiavellian maneuvering.
Yeah.
And at the end, he's successful and it works. His plan works and he wins. And he doesn't just win and gets to walk off having done that and that's it. He also wins and gets to kind of like bully peers a little bit as well.
That's one of the most sad ones for me. And that's the Series 1, Episode 2, as you say. Like, oh, I've actually got you something, but you're paying for it. It's horrible.
It's on your credit card. And then walks off. And as he walks off, all you can hear is his
yeah. Like, so it's not like, oh, this means nothing to me. He was reveling in that.
Like very few other sitcoms will have a literal psychopath as the main character.
He really is, but he wins because he's got the upper hand. As you say, you say he's intelligent. Sometimes he doesn't always think through all of the ways in which he could be thwarted, right? And then, but it is very much with an intelligence that Alan goes about his plans and using other people to get his way. And Machiavellian is the word, isn't it?
Yeah.
I was just thinking there, though, the only other, well, not the only other, but one character that springs to mind that is maybe vaguely similar to B'Stard and nowhere near as nasty, but Edmund Blackadder.
Yeah.
In Series 2 particularly, there are moments, where he's like, here is a purse of monies. Which I'm not going to give to you, to the old crone, and that the superiority thing, because he does it to people who are beneath him, isn't it? And I think that is a theme that runs through a lot of British sitcom. We wouldn't admit to that nasty streak within our darkest thoughts and ourselves, but like you do enjoy people bullying people who are lesser than them, and it all comes back to class, doesn't it?
Have you noticed that Alan B'Stard, of all of Rik's characters, is probably, I'm trying to think of the phrasing, like he moves around the least. He's very still and doesn't dance around and pratfall and things,
well,
you know what I mean?
And you know what? You're right. And I think that's because a lot of the
like
the comedy,
a lizard brain type thing.
A lot of the comedy in this show is gag based and dialogue based. There's a great example of this where I think it was a comic relief sketch, and it's floating around online, and we've posted it on the Talking Bottom page, but on the Talking Bottom Facebook before, which is where Alan B'Stard, it's Rik as Alan, and they're doing a comic relief sketch. And Celia Imrie comes in and says something, oh, blah, 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 she's in with Cecil Parkinson and the Whip. And then he turns the camera and goes, oh, Cecil Parkinson and the Whip, and does that Rickism and sort of becomes...
Richie.
And
of course, that was another show.
Yeah,
right
under my bottom, right? He's in character as B'Stard, but he's doing those mannerisms. And it's like, oh, wow, I didn't realize kind of how still you were and how cool you looked until you suddenly adopted that look and started wiggling your bum on screen.
Yeah. Absolutely. And he isn't always completely without pratfalls, though. And there is physical comedy within Alan B'Stard. There's a bit in, I think it's the very last episode of series 4, where he just gets shoved into it's like a horse's water trough.
Yeah.
And it's a brilliant fall that he does. He goes full body into this trough, and then he comes out of it, and his hair's all wet, and it's kind of like that curls dangling in front of him, almost like that, the Trump-esque turd in Bottom, and he just does this pathetic little flick of it over his head as he walks off camera.
Is that the one where Susan's remarried or got engaged or something, and he's so I've been cuckolded or something, and then
she's leaving him for this guy.
Yeah, but then he kills him, or so leaves his
head in the bed. It's horrific. Yeah, there are real moments of horror in the New Statesman. And one thing I've noticed on the rewatch was the use of sound and music for those little stings when there's like horror and moments of tension. Yeah. Like it is very cleverly.
Is it the Godfather music? Like it's trying to.
It might be emulating it. Yeah. It's sort of this, notes of dread and these little like like weird little stings that come in, particularly when Piers is realizing something, or it's very well done.
We've had murder and bribery and stuff. Is there any line that he wouldn't cross? You think?
No.
Straight away.
He'll kill teddy bears and gamble their ways out.
The worst thing he's ever done.
Oh no, but he does terrible things, often with no benefit to himself. So he'll do terrible things for his own benefit, such as burying radioactive waste under a kid's school because he gets money for it. But it's okay because it's just a comprehensive school. But also he'll do things to people that doesn't benefit him at all. Case in point here, you mentioned physical comedy, and that put me in mind of one of my favorite bits of physical comedy from the New Statesman. There's a scene where he's been in a restaurant. He's just had dinner with Stephen Fry, and Hugh Laurie has been a waiter. They've been bullying.
Yes,
comes outside. There's a guy on crutches who's begging for money.
Falklands veterans?
That's it. He's only got one leg, but he's on crutches. And Alan steps out with Stephen Fry, and this guy goes, "Remember the Falklands, Gov?" And Alan says, "Indeed I do. I made a fortune," and kicks his crutches away, or kicks one crutch away, and the guy falls down like Del Boy going through the bar. Brilliant, and just walks past. That didn't benefit Alan at all, but he did it because
did it for fun.
Yeah, sometimes people are cruel to be kind, and sometimes people are cruel to be cruel.
He is like unapologetically awful, isn't he, to anyone he encounters? Like you say, just for the laugh, he'll do that. And isn't it interesting? There are a few little echoes of plot lines and things like with Bottom. So the Falklands veteran and the idea of all these people that are there politically and who Ritchie and or indeed B'Stard will interact with in that era.
See if you agree with me. I think Ritchie would actually really like Alan. Alan would fucking hate Ritchie. To be.
Yeah, you're right.
He wouldn't think twice about him. He'd like, who do you vote for? What are you any interest?
Well, Alan would try and he would weigh up whether there's any money that you could hoodwink out of
Ritchie.
What
could I get out of you? Nothing.
If there's moneyed land or there's something that Ritchie could give to him as because Ritchie would be so snivelling with Alan B'Stard, wouldn't he? Because we've talked about it before. Like Ritchie is a Tory boy, and Alan is, as you've said about what his because obviously it's still Rick playing all of these characters, but with just a little bit of tweaking, could Ritchie have become a B'Stard?
I think there's a you know what, maybe they were twins who were separated at birth.
Maybe B'Stard stole all of Ritchie's wealth, killed his mum,
switched at birth. That's the life Ritchie should have had.
Put him in with the aunties and left him to it.
So another similarity with Bottom is the title, The New Statesman. Rick didn't want it to be called The New Statesman originally. He originally wanted it to be called The Member.
Nice.
So that very much puts me in mind of your Bottom.
Yeah.
And then when that was when they said no to that, he proposed The New Member, and eventually that became The New Statesman.
No.
But that was when they were trying to get the show off the ground. That was one of the potential titles. And at the same time, in order to get it commissioned by, I think it was Granada, they sent the bosses there like a sort of fake entry in Who's Who for Alan B'Stard, in which it said his activities were listed as dining at expensive restaurants at other people's expense and grinding the faces of the poor.
Do you think they had a problem with the name? If just member was a problem, B'Stard, was that even an issue? You think?
Well, it's not in the title, is it? They would argue it's not the word bastard because there's no A in it, and there's an
the early ones. Oh, Mr. Bastard, it's B'Stard.
Yeah,
The Member would have been a fantastic title for it, wouldn't it? but I can see why they argued for it to be that more grown-up approach, and potentially it was whoever was in charge at ITV Control that said that they couldn't have that. But member in itself isn't a rude word, is it? In the way that bottom is.
Correct.
So interesting whether they wanted it to come across as this political grown-up satire, and that would have maybe undercut it in terms of tone.
Yeah.
Because you say the New Statesman, you don't necessarily think sitcom, do you? Like, but the same with Yes Minster.
Yeah, true.
Yes, Prime Minister. Like, they're not sitcom titles as such, are they? So I wonder if they wanted to emulate that side of satirical comedy rather than going for the knob gag.
Did you say that? Do you think there's?
I'm not saying they were right, by the way.
Well, no, okay, sure.
I think Rik
you've
had a
made me
great
think.
idea.
You know how
obviously.
there are people. A lot of people don't get the irony with Alf Garnett and Al Murray pub landlord thing. Do you think there were people watching it just thinking like, yeah, the poor art workshop scum. Finally someone's saying.
I imagine.
The fact that Tories actually said, oh yes, he's based on me, and honestly, some of the speeches that Alan gives, they're delivered with such verve by Rik. Like, it's quite terrifying how much like you sort of like you're drawn in by his arguments in that way. But like if you had a real Tory candidate coming up with all those sort of things, I know people would vote for them because people are voting for those ideas still. And it is, I mean, you say you love to hate him. I do love to hate Alan B'Stard, but you just hate the Tories.
Well. Let me.
I know we're told not to get too political, but fuck the Tories, and that's what Rik's message in this sitcom is, isn't it? It's not that he's to be emulated; he's an arsehole.
Well, let me give you what Rik says about that, about his character. He said
he wasn't a Tory, was he?
He said in the Record Mirror in February 1989, I haven't really liked any of the characters I've played, but I think he's the character I like the least, although I possibly feel the sorriest for. He doesn't know it, but he's desperately lonely. But he's such a bastard. What do you want me to say? I don't want to marry him.
Nice.
And that's his thoughts on it.
Very true. And that's the Rimmer thing, isn't it? It's that they are desperately lonely, even if they don't realise it. But Alan doesn't care enough about anybody else.
Richie knows he's lonely.
Richie knows, yeah.
Something I've come across in my weird connections I've made. If there was to be a television show or film about Flashheart, I think the best possible arch enemy for him would be Alan B'Stard. I think they would really play off each other.
He'd be the Lex Luthor to the Superman. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I've never thought about it. In what way would you imagine them working as a team, though? Or would
not as a team. As enemies, yeah. Like, it's just the fact that they are the two Rik characters who win and are very confident, but they're very different from each other. There's, Flashheart, it's still... He's a bastard, but he is on the side of good, I suppose. And I think there's
B'Stard
teaming up more. So.
No. B'Stard would hate the fact that Flashheart is a hero.
Yeah,
and so B'Stard would be able to get women, but these women would sleep with him because he's paying them, whatever. But they'd secretly be in love with Flash in the same way that James Bond often comes in and steals the bad guy's woman. Yeah.
The Flash is actually good in bed.
Yeah.
B'Stard is not. That's the brilliant thing. It's all premature ejaculation. That opening scene that you talked about, it's it's absolutely spot on. So in that way, he's very similar to Richie as well. And I just want to say, there was a line in the final ever episode that made me laugh so hard. It's when he's murdered Otto and he's going to see Sarah, who's like comatose with trauma, having found his head in the bed. And he arrives at this, like, it's a nun nurse. And he said, I came as soon as I heard. Good news has that effect on me. And then he basically kills her. He turns like the electric.
But she comes back. Yeah, he does, doesn't he? She comes back in the play though, doesn't she?
Yes, she does. She returns. Yeah, we haven't touched upon obviously the New Statesman episode 2006. The Blair B'Stard project, but that's what came later, of course.
Well, the show was a hit, and unlike Bottom, was received well by critics at the time. So it returned for the full series in 1989, 1991, and 1992, with Rik returning to the character, always finding it a welcome challenge. He said, I'm still after this bastard I've been trying to get to grips with for years. He's been present to a certain extent in Rik, Richie, Rich, and Kevin. There's a whole synthesis of adult unpleasant comedy in The New Statesman. And the show itself, it went on with the schemes that Alan was involved with growing wilder, which is a common trend of sitcoms as they go on. Things often tend to get a bit more absurd. But Alan's journey took him from getting elected and arming the local police all the way through to staging his own assassination, bringing back hanging, and then naming himself Lord Protector. So the show was appreciated by critics, even the Sunday Sport, which, as we know, one critic, I believe it was Kevin Melly, our eye on the telly,
Kevin Kelly,
Kevin Kelly, who said in the paper, "It's no surprise that the reruns of The New Statesman are the outstanding comedy on the telly at the moment." To which Aid Edmondson quipped when Rik read him this on set of Bottom, "And who said the Sport was full of shit?"
I love it. Yeah, it's
That's
Sup,
in
isn't it?
Sup, isn't it?
Yeah,
It is the shop. Yeah.
it's brilliant.
And then the character did return as part of the New Labour movement, didn't
He did, yeah. In 2006, they reprised B'Stard for the Blair B'Stard Project, which was a stage show. Did you guys go and see it?
Sadly, I did not.
Did you not? I did. I went to see it in Manchester. It was brilliant. I mean, I know from the time the critics kind of maybe were a little bit, Rik was great, but, maybe the actual play potentially didn't have sort of like legs, as it were.
Was it written by Marks and Graham?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. So obviously it was post Rik's quad bike accident. I remember enjoying just seeing Rik on stage. That is all I can tell you. I went out with my family. We had a lovely night at the theatre. Saw Rik like prancing around, doing loads of jokes about Blairism.
How old were you at the time?
So when was it? 2006. So I would have been 20-ish, 21.
Sorry to ask you a difficult one.
Yeah.
Still quite young for such a political comedy thing. That would have gone way over my head at that age, I have to say.
At 21.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I'm still pretty thick now, to be honest.
Well, I didn't want to say it, Piers. But no, it was a brilliant romp. It was him, womanizing, him conniving. It was everything you wanted B'Stard to be.
Yeah.
But I think there was apparently a sort of nervousness from Rik. That he couldn't remember all of his lines necessarily weren't perfect as a result of the quad bike accident.
Was that noticeable?
I think he worried about it more than anyone else. There's a wonderful quote in Morris. I think it was one of Morris's interviews after Rik died, where he just said, to be a great comic, you need to have charisma, you need to be, handsome, you need to be really fucking funny, and people need to adore you, and you need to remember your lines, and you've got 4 of those things, And he was great, Rik, in it. I just remember the confidence in which he swaggered around the stage. I read a stat that in I think it was like in the 100 minutes. Rik was on stage for 90 of them.
Right.
So he was really working fucking hard. And it was glorious to see him return. And then, of course, you also had Adonis Knut, where he worked with Marks and Gran again, which we won't go into Adonis too much now because we've already talked so much about B'Stard, but it was obviously something they were trying to recapture the magic of a real arsehole character. Because did you guys watch Believe Nothing?
I saw some.
Yeah, same.
It was only the one series and it didn't really fly as much, did it? And I've said it before that I think it's a shame because, when Alan B'Stard came into the room, it was like, well, actually, this guy was pretty sexy, right? And Rik was just a little bit older. So the scenes where he is kind of, like trying to chat up younger girls and stuff just didn't really land in the same way I felt when I watched it anyway. But he's he's the most clever professor in all of Oxford and he's lording it over everyone. And so the premise is there, but I just don't think it really flew in the way that obviously previous projects had. And it's great that they tried it though, right? Like, I'm so glad I went to see a recording of Believe Nothing. Again, glad that I got to see anything Rik did. And I remember, again, just as that affection in the room whenever Rik was around and entertaining everyone in it. So, yeah, but Adonis Knut was obviously a character that I think should have been one that went down in the great, like, kind of history books for Rik. But he had so many, as you mentioned earlier, Paul, at the start, like Rik, most actors would be grateful if they had 1 or 2 major roles that they're remembered for. And Rik has probably more than 5 than you can count on one hand.
And one of them is Alan B'Stard, The New Statesman, and I definitely recommend people giving it a rewatch. Based on the rewatches we've given that show for this episode, I really recommend giving it a rewatch. It's got much of it hasn't aged. The comedy is still really sharp. Rik's performance is fantastic. The physical comedy is great. There are some topical things that might go over people's heads. But to be honest, most of the shit that people do in terms of politics and all that kind of thing, it's all cyclical. It all happens again and again and again. So most of it will land quite well anyway.
I say it comes back round, doesn't it? Yeah. It really is quite shocking how it does still resonate.
Right, I think it's now time for a quiz. 10 questions on The New Statesman for you guys, drawn from a variety of episodes across the 4 series. Hopefully they're not too difficult. If there's questions that ask for things like a number, then I'll take the nearest to that number, that kind of thing. Now, what would you guys like as your phrases? Because we're avoiding farts, so what would you like as your phrase?
I will say largest majority.
Largest majority, excellent. That's a very
go with fingers, Piers.
Excellent. Okay. All right, here we go. What was Alan B'Stard's majority when he was first elected MP for Halton Price?
Largest majority. He's killed the other 2 cunts. I remember it. It's in the pilot. Oh, fuck. Okay, well, I'm just going to guess 43,000.
Okay, and Matt?
I'm going to guess higher. It's 44.
Okay, well,
1,000.
it's 24,000,
Yeah.
although this is later revealed to be entirely fraudulent. So that's
Yeah.
1 point to Angela. Which high-ranking political figure is frequently referenced but never seen on screen? I think Matt was just
actually said his thing.
So that's Margaret Thatcher?
That's correct.
And that was voiced by the same voice artist that did the spitting image.
That's right, yeah. In the episode 3-Line Whipping, what is Alan's plan to avoid a key parliamentary vote?
Fake his own death.
Oh, okay. You know what? I'm going to give you half. He fakes a serious injury.
Nice.
Okay. All right, so it's 1.5 to Ange,
So how
1
many
to
times
Matt.
does he fake his death?
I know, that was just a wild step
Yeah.
in the dark, which
Okay.
is instantly what you'll be getting. Anyway, carry on. That was Blackadder.
Which famous Labour politician does Alan once get into a physical fight with?
Fingers Beers? Is it Neil Kinnock?
That's correct.
Mm.
Two to that.
Does that happen on camera or do you hear of it?
I think it's on camera, but they're very
Yeah.
careful to
Yeah.
sort of like not let you see. And but just for the avoidance of all doubt, it's a lookalike. It's not the actual Neil Kinnock that they used.
Did Coogan do the voice? He
Coog-
used to do that for Spitting Image, didn't he?
I think this was before he was actually
Spitting Image would have been late 80s.
well,
Anyway, go
yeah,
on. It wasn't him.
Chris Barry did a lot of the voices for
He
Spitting Image at the time.
did, yeah.
Okay, in Friends of St James, what group does Alan join in order to advance his own interests?
Largest majority, diddly-diddle-doo, I don't know, the Catholics.
No,
Fingers Beers. I'm going to guess Peter, P-E-T-A.
that's incorrect. The answer is the Freemasons.
Makes sense.
And
I thought he'd already be a member.
Yeah.
next question. Alan once claims he made millions by investing in what specific commodity during a crisis?
Fingers Beers. Guns.
Is incorrect. Ange, do you want to try?
Oh, I don't know. Commodity.
No, I'm afraid it's oil during the Gulf War.
Makes sense. See, we haven't studied all of these
No.
episodes.
Talking
I told you.
stuff.
I told you.
Talking about just Alan.
Taken from a variety of episodes.
Yeah, no, fair enough.
In the episode Peers of the Realm, why is Piers temporarily made a peer?
Fingers Beers. Because of his new wife.
Incorrect.
His dad dies.
Incorrect. It's just part of Alan does it. Alan gets him made a peer as part of a plot to control the House of Commons. At the moment, it's 2 points to Matt, 1.5 to you.
Okay.
What political ideology does Alan sarcastically endorse when trying to infiltrate the opposition?
Fingers Beers. What is an ideology?
No,
What does that
largest majority. I don't know, communism?
No, incorrect.
Pacifism.
Sorry, the answer is socialism.
That is communism.
No, it's different. No,
A different debate, but it's essentially the same.
no, they're not. No, sorry, you.
Let's not get. No, come on.
No. You know what?
Time.
No,
They're both left
you're,
wing.
you're reminding me of Peter Mannion there. Oh, for God's sake. Diversity and inclusion are the same thing. No, they're not. Diversity and inclusivity are the same as each other. Okay, all right, final question. What satirical claim does Alan make about the purpose of prisons in the UK?
Fingers Beers. Is that slave labour?
No.
Repeat the question.
What claim, I mean, and as part of the show it's satirical, but what claim does Alan make about the purpose of prisons in the UK?
Oh,
He-
no, to
he's-
keep the poor off the streets.
Well, no, he says that they should be privatised and profit generating. There you go. It was quite prescient, wasn't it? And at the end of that quiz, sorry, Ange. Matt has pipped you by 0.5 point. It's 2 points to Matt and 1.5 to Ange. So Matt is this week's winner. Well done.
That's amazing. I'm very ignorant with New Statesman and politics in general. So
Well, there you go. That was Alan B'Stard in the New Statesman. We'll be back next week with another of Rick's iconic characters. And if you want to give us a follow on social media, we're at Talking Bottom on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Blue Sky. Oh, and we're on YouTube as well, where we put all our podcasts, including our recent live one, where you can actually see the video of it with Ed by us on stage at the Rik Mayall Comedy Festival in Droitwich, where we got to interview him. And he answered a load of questions with some really great answers and shared his insights.
It was fantastic, wasn't it? And we won't keep banging on about it, but we probably should, because we're off to the Edinburgh Fringe this August, the 24th, the final Sunday. If anyone's around, please do come and see us. We're going to be interviewing, we can say, Lee Coons, Dick Head, is going to be joining us on stage. It's really exciting. So we're on the Underbelly website. We're at the Ermintrude venue in Bristow Square at 3:10 on Sunday, the 24th of August. Please come.
and of course the book Talking Bottom, A Guide to the Cult Sitcom, is out now. Please buy it if you haven't already. No, if you have already, buy another one. They're great.
And if you've read it, let us know what you think. We'll stop plugging all of it. I mean, we never intended for this to be something that we ended up plugging everything that we've been doing, but it's an exciting year, isn't it? Busy. But yeah, we hope you've enjoyed the podcast on Alan B'Stard, and join us next week for the next in our special on Rick's iconic characters.
See you next time.
Goodbye.